All right, so today we're diving into tech due diligence, specifically the hidden risks in tech, the stuff that can really derail your plans and cost you big time. And we've got an expert here with us who's seen it all.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, you'd think with all the money at stake, people would be more thorough. What are some of the things that buyers often overlook when they're evaluating a tech company?
Well, it's like buying a house. You might love those granite countertops and
Yeah.
the stainless steel appliances, but if the foundation is crumbling, you've got a major problem.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah, and in tech, that crumbling foundation can take many forms.
Okay, so what are some of the red flags that you always watch out for?
Well, the first one is integration complexity. Every acquisition involves some level of integration, but sometimes it's way more complicated than it looks.
Okay, so how does that impact the valuation?
Well, imagine trying to merge two companies, and they've got completely different databases, incompatible APIs, security protocols that just don't align. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
The integration costs alone can just blow your budget. And the delays. Delays can kill your momentum. I worked on a deal once where a company claimed they had a plug-and-play system.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, but during due diligence, we found out their database was running on a 20-year-old platform. It couldn't talk to any modern systems.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the integration costs added millions to the deal, and they had to delay the launch by almost a year.
Ouch, yeah, that's a painful lesson. So how can you spot that kind of problem early on?
Well, first of all, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Look beyond the marketing materials. Dig into the actual architecture. You got to ask the tough questions. How many systems are involved? How do they talk to each other? What are the dependencies? And if you see any signs of a tech Frankenstein, demand a detailed integration roadmap.
Okay, so it's about really understanding how everything fits together. What's another potential pitfall?
Single-person dependency. It's more common than you might think. You have a company where one brilliant developer built and maintains a critical system. They know everything about it, but no one else does.
All right, so you're essentially hostage to that one person's knowledge.
Exactly.
What kind of impact can that have on a company's value?
It's a huge risk factor. What happens if that key developer decides to leave, gets hit by a bus, wins the lottery, and retires early?
Oh, yeah?
You're left with a system you can't maintain, can't update, you can't even fully understand. That lack of control can significantly reduce the value of the company.
Makes sense. So how do you mitigate that risk?
Knowledge sharing and documentation are key. Look for signs of a healthy development culture, where knowledge is shared and documented. Ask about code reviews, pair programming, internal wikis, anything that indicates a collaborative approach.
So it's not just about the code itself, but also the processes and the culture around it.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered integration headaches and the risks of single-person dependency. What's the third red flag on your list?
This one is about vendor lock-in and third-party dependencies. So relying on external vendors is normal, but when a company is overly reliant on a single vendor for critical services or technology, it creates a huge vulnerability.
Yeah, because if that vendor raises prices, changes their terms, or even goes out of business, you're in a tough spot.
Exactly. You're at their mercy. And that lack of control can be a major turnoff for buyers.
Right.
Yeah, and it can also limit your options. For future growth and innovation, I've seen deals fall apart because a company was so dependent on a single vendor that it was practically impossible to disentangle themselves.
So we've uncovered two major pitfalls: systems that are difficult to integrate, and the risk of relying too heavily on a single developer. Is there anything else that keeps you up at night when you're evaluating a tech company?
Oh, absolutely. One thing that I think often gets overlooked is how the technology has evolved over time and whether the original architects are still involved.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because you see, understanding how decisions were made in the past and by whom can tell you a lot about how the team handles things, how they retain knowledge, how that knowledge is shared.
So you're saying it's kind of like looking for clues about their decision-making DNA.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what are some red flags that you see in that area?
Well, imagine a scenario where you've got a small group of engineers who built the initial product, and they've been making all the major decisions ever since.
Okay.
That can be a problem because it creates a knowledge bottleneck.
Right.
If those key people leave, you're left with a system that no one fully understands.
So it's kind of like that single-person dependency issue,
Yeah.
but on a larger scale.
Exactly. On the other hand, you might have a company where decisions are spread out, but there's no clear process or documentation. And that can lead to inconsistencies in how things are built and maintained, which makes it harder to scale and adapt.
So it's about finding that balance
Yeah,
between having structure and allowing for flexibility and innovation.
you got it.
And that's where evaluating the team
Hmm.
becomes so important.
Exactly. You can have the most amazing tech in the world, but if the team can't execute, it's all for nothing.
So you've mentioned the team a few times now. Why is it so important to evaluate the team when you're doing tech due diligence?
Because at the end of the day, you're not just buying a piece of software.
Right.
You're investing in a team's ability to maintain that software, to evolve it, to grow that software.
That's a really good point. The tech is just a snapshot in time. It's the team that will determine its future.
Exactly.
Right.
Strong team with good processes can fix technical issues, but the most brilliant code base in the world won't help if the team can't scale or adapt.
Makes sense.
Having a state-of-the-art kitchen, but not knowing how to cook,
I like that.
you might have all the fancy gadgets
Yeah.
and appliances, but without the culinary skills, you're not going to create anything worthwhile.
So when you're evaluating a tech team,
Yeah.
what are some key things that you're looking for?
Well, we've already talked about knowledge sharing and decision-making processes. But beyond that, it's crucial to understand if their current technology choices support future growth.
Okay.
Are they using scalable architecture? Do they have a culture of continuous improvement? Are they investing in their team's skills and development?
So it's not just about whether the tech works today, but whether it can evolve as the company grows
Exactly.
and as the market changes.
It's about looking beyond the current state
Yeah.
and assessing their ability to innovate and adapt.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new technology,
Yeah,
but it's the team that will ultimately determine its success.
right. And that's something that buyers often overlook. They get dazzled by the tech specs and the demos, but fail to really assess the team's capabilities.
And that could be a costly mistake. So, thinking about all these red flags, it really boils down to understanding the potential risks
Yeah.
and making sure the team is equipped to handle them.
That's a great point. It's not just about identifying the problems, but also evaluating whether the team has the skills and the processes in place to address them.
So it's not just about the what, it's also about the who and the how. This has been incredibly insightful. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's quickly recap some of the key takeaways from this deep dive into tech due diligence. We started by talking about how it's about so much more than just the technical stuff. It's about anticipating future challenges and understanding the team behind the tech.
Absolutely.
And we talked about those 3 major red flags. That can significantly impact a company's valuation, integration complexity, single-person dependency, and vendor lock-in.
Right.
We also talked about the importance of understanding how the technology has evolved
Yeah.
and whether the original architects are still involved, which will give you really valuable insights into the company's decision-making process and their knowledge-sharing culture.
Yeah. So important.
And finally, we emphasize that it's not just about buying software. It's about investing in a team's ability to maintain and evolve that software. A strong team with solid processes can overcome technical challenges. But even the best tech can't save a weak team. This has been such a valuable conversation. I feel like our listeners are walking away with a whole new perspective on tech due diligence.
I hope so.
Any final words of wisdom
Yeah.
for our listeners before we wrap up?
Well, if I had to leave our listeners with one key takeaway, it would be this. When you're doing your due diligence, always ask yourself, what could go wrong? And is the team equipped to handle it? That one question can help you avoid a lot of headaches down the line.
That's great advice. Really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us today.
It's been a pleasure.
All right, listeners, that's a wrap for today's deep dive into the world of tech due diligence. We hope you found this episode valuable. Remember, it's about so much more than just the code. It's about understanding the risks, evaluating the team, and making sure you're investing in a company that's built for long-term success. Until next time, keep diving deep, and we'll catch you on the next episode of The Deep Dive.